What's up internet, Kevin here bringing you guys my final thoughts on Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, which is available on Xbox One, PS4, and PC, and in this coming November will be available on Xbox 360 and PS3. All the gameplay you're going to be seeing here, as well as my personal experience, is based on the PS4 version. Now if you guys saw my day one impressions of the game, you'll know that I praised a lot of what I got to experience in my first day of playing it, and a lot of that still holds true, but there's a few new things we need to address, a few changes and addendums based on the endgame content, and a few new mechanics that were added later on. To begin with, the game's presentation is still one of its largest strengths. Visually, it's splendid, texture detail is solid, and the concept art going into this world is strong. But by far, its greatest strength is in the variety and fluidity of character animations, which keeps combat looking smooth and cinematic. The camera rarely ever hits an unfortunate viewing angle, keeping you in the action, and the game's weather effects look great. Now, one thing I would like to note is that on the console version of this game, you can experience a bit of a frame rate drop during really high intense scenes, which really only happens when it's, say, late night while there's a lot of rain effects going on and you're fighting 100 orcs that are all armed with torches. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it is just a bit jarring. Now, as for the game's story, well, there's a little bit more hit and miss going on here. First off, I will praise the fact that Shadow of Mordor has done an excellent job of blending in with the already established Middle-earth lore, though it does make a few intentional alterations to the setting, and is clearly taking the overall plot in its own direction, with some interesting implications in the game's ending. That being said, most of the game's writing is up and down. It's got a really strong start and an okay ending with an interesting direction, as I said, but a lot of the middle feels really weak in comparison. Dialogue itself during cutscenes goes between great and every single fantasy cliché line in the book, though regular in-game banter amongst enemies or our body-sharing protagonists leans thankfully towards the stronger side. Now, the core mechanics are nothing too original, but the execution here is really solid. It takes a lot of noticeable influence from WB Games' other really successful franchise, the Batman Arkham games, which they themselves have a lot of influence from the Assassin's Creed games, but refined the process a lot more. Combat is momentum-based, rewarding players who land several strikes in a row without getting hit themselves with brutal finishing moves, AoE stun attacks, or the ability to instantly possess and gain the loyalty of an enemy. The player's ability to survive and not get hit relies mostly upon timing, either by parrying enemy attacks or flat out dodging them, and in some cases only one of these will work. If you get careless enough and lose all of your HP, the game doesn't send you straight into a game over, however, but instead gives you the last chance to regain a bit of HP by completing a small minigame to dodge an opponent's finishing blow, though you're only ever given 2 of these chances back to back. If you die 3 times, the game instead gives you an automatic death, though in this game, your character is simply considered to have died and resurrected elsewhere with whatever actions you took during your last life remaining. Traditional sword fighting is not the only way to murder a ton of orcs, however. The game does give you 2 other methods for dispatching your enemies. 1, you can use a spiritual bow and arrow to take enemies out in ranged combat, or 2, you can use a broken longsword as a dagger to do stealth kills. Ranged combat employs both limited ammo, which can be restored by draining life from enemies, and a focus meter that gives you a few moments of slowed time, making it really easy to line up headshots to insta-kill a few enemies at range, even when they're actively moving, such as when they're charging you. Stealth combat relies on the fairly tropey basics: crouch low to the ground, hide in tall grass or behind boxes, and instant kill enemies from behind, above, or below, or in this case even from the front. Enemies are extremely blind to anything shorter than them, and it's hilariously easy to stealth kill anyone wandering around by themselves, though orcs do have the habit of hanging out in groups, making it a little harder to kill all of them one by one, as usually they'll clump close enough together to notice you, except of course in missions focused on stealth, in which case they're usually pretty laughably spread out, making your job really easy. Now, of course, killing outrageous numbers of orcs does come with its perks. The game rewards you with 3 different experience types, with certain missions favoring one type over the other, and these all go towards improving your character in different ways. One type can be spent to unlock rune slots to upgrade your weapons with different passive benefits or increase your health, ammo, and focus meter, while XP and power upgrade your character in a number of different ways, like opening up new combat options or gaining the ability to mount and use different beasts to attack enemies with. Now, like I said back in my day one impressions, one of the central mechanics that really tries to make this game different from others is the captain system, in which there are tougher orcs you can hunt down to get XP, power, and money. Each of them has their own specific strengths and vulnerabilities, which you can only discover by gathering intel, which you can gain by either freeing slaves or mind-reading certain lower-ranked orcs. And while gathering intel is technically optional, your job is made a lot easier by knowing what works and what doesn't, especially considering how some captains may even have weaknesses that leave them open to single-hit kills. Midway through the game, however, a new mechanic is introduced that makes this system even more complex, and that's being able to dominate orcs into obeying your commands. You can use this to raise your own army, making one of your captains kill another captain, or even plant one as a bodyguard for a war chief, then work alongside him to betray and replace said war chief or dominate him as well. Introducing this mechanic so late into the game is something of a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, I really like the fact that the game does force you to have to learn how to fight and assassinate orcs by yourself without having this really useful ability first, but on the other hand, it's such a major part of the late game, I feel like you're really missing out for not having it sooner. So putting this all together, what do you get? Well, you get about 12 to 14 hours of good gameplay, with potentially more, depending on how much of a completionist you are, and if you don't mind a bit of repetitiveness. The main missions themselves really don't take that long, and if you just aim to blitz the story missions alone, the game can be as short as 8 or 9 hours, but it's hard to at least not dabble in a little bit of the game's numerous side missions, most of which just boil down to testing how skilled you are with the game's 3 main components for combat. It's pretty engaging at first, but the more time you spend with this game, the more that feeling of repetition builds up. Adding the domination mechanic midway through really does help to invigorate it, but at the end of the day, it all still comes right back to confronting captain after captain, possibly with some intel gathering beforehand. This is especially made clear with just how easy it is to run into groups of captains on accident. It's actually pretty rare that you'll only ever deal with one by himself, and in the course of trying to just kill one captain, you'll more than likely end up facing off 1 or 2 more, which can grate on your nerves over time. The clashing dialogues with them are initially a great touch, and it's really awesome when you see how what they say reflects active events in the game, but after so many encounters, it just gets really annoying to see everything slowed down 2 or 3 times in a row just for a new enemy to introduce himself. So overall, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor is a solid action game taking place in the Lord of the Rings universe and is one of the best titles to come out of the franchise, and will definitely appeal strongly not only to people that have seen the movies, but even to hardcore Tolkien fans. Some of its mechanics will wear a little thin after the 10 or 12 hour mark, but that's still plenty of time to complete the game's story mode and then some. I'd like to note too that the game's ending very clearly wants to lead into a sequel, and with the right tweaks and reworkings, this could turn into a fantastic series, as long as it doesn't just reuse the same formula and get milked for as much as possible. I wouldn't say that this is a must-grab game this very second. If you don't have anything else to play at the moment though, and are looking for a good action title, I would say that paying full price right now is worth it, but it's also something you can definitely wait on for a price drop if you've got some other releases you're already sinking your teeth into. Well, that was my review of Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. If you guys are interested in grabbing the game for yourselves, I do have a link posted down below in the description along with my Twitter profile. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to let me know by hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing if you haven't yet. I'm going to see you guys soon with more content, including my full review of Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS, but until then, I'm Kevin Kenson, and I'll see you guys later.